All right, so this is the Blue Collar Creative Podcast. We have Chet Larson here, and this is Phil Pearson, my co-host, and I'm Ryan. And we're going to just talk to Chet, learn a little about him, learn a little about his story, and how he got into farming and also into content creation. So, Chet, welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a fifth generation farm kid, I guess, that decided to take my experience farming to the internet and start a YouTube channel, Instagram, all the fun stuff of social media.
Where are you at now? Like, how's the content creation journey going? Like, what's your subscriber at? What's all that stuff?
Well, I think 410,000 on
Nice.
YouTube. Instagram is 160,000, just about. Those are my two that I focus on.
Yeah.
I think about 100,000 on TikTok. That's just something I play with. Try to keep up with the youth, the really young ones that are really into
Yeah, because how old are you now,
TikTok.
Chet?
Soon to be 29.
29.
Oh, when was your birthday?
October will be.
October of what?
Why does it matter?
You're getting a birthday
Yeah,
gift.
we're getting
Chet.
closer here. So.
You're getting a birthday gift.
We can cut
Yeah,
this
don't
out.
put that.
you
Don't
know?
put that information out there. You're gonna get a lot of weird packages.
Yeah, what's your address again? No.
So, just from that perspective, being a 29-year-old farmer, fifth generation, what's that like? Like, what got you into farming, and what's it like being a young farmer?
I think born into me, anyways. I mean, I've been here since I was could walk.
Yep.
Grandma babysat us all the time as mom worked, so we were at the farm, and follow dad around was the thing to do. And that's, I guess, what taught me a lot of it, just watching, learning, and fell in love with it. So it's been 100% what I've wanted to do my whole life is just farm. So
Nice. Well,
That-
what made you fall in love with it? Like, what was that thing? Do you remember anything at like an early age of like, oh, yeah, I really like doing this?
I just like being around equipment in general, and then I would say a new job every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, we show up to work the same place every day, but generally, besides planting and harvest, and even some of those jobs can be in different jobs multiple times a day. So I like that, how you never know what's going to happen. Every year is different. You can do it. I mean, you can ask Grandpa that's farmed his whole life, and every year is different. This spring was exceptional, and he said he's 81 now. Said he's never seen a year like this with moisture and how drug out the spring was. So, I mean, you can do it your whole life and have a new struggle or a new success every year, every week.
It's always different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. What about that family legacy of farming? Like, just that fifth generation. Like, where did it start, and like, what's the history of that?
So I only know basically from like what I've seen. Great grandpa, he moved off in the late 80s, would be great grandpa. He lived on the farm, raised my grandpa that currently still lives on the farm here. And he was, I mean, the farm was a lot smaller back then. I think they farmed when my dad and uncle that I farm with now, when they started farming, I would say they had 400 acres, and they were more into hogs. They raised a lot of hogs. That was Grandpa's thing. He raised hogs. Dad and Randy got into hogs, built a bunch of barns. Then it kind of market turned to not so profitable, and it kind of became back to my grandparents with the hog business, and Dad and Randy focused on crop farming, row crop farming. So that's where they started to expand in that direction, and it's just continued to grow. Now we have the big Swede that is farming with us.
He's in the
now.
audience today.
He's sitting there watching, waving. So we brought him in, so we're custom farming for him, and treat it just like it's any of our acres.
What does that mean? Like custom farming for those who aren't.
Custom farming would be he does not own any equipment yet, right, Eric? Yet doesn't own any equipment, and so basically he pays rent for whatever we do over the field.
Okay.
Which we do some custom work for neighboring farms also, some land rolling, and when it really gets wet, we've done some custom harvesting. Not everyone has tracked equipment, and when stuff goes really, really south, we've had to go and help some neighbors and get that job done, which we were pretty tired of the mud on our own farm, but they needed help, and so we helped them out that way. So it's a pretty common thing in farming to have custom hire stuff.
How many acres are you farming now?
I don't answer that question.
Oh, wow. PR.
All of them. All of them.
All of the acres.
You know, it's funny because like when we edited a little bit for Welkers as well, and I think he puts some of those numbers out there. But when it comes to I guess like the things that you want to say and don't want to say, and having your life be so public, right? Like, how do you ride that line where you're aware of the cameras being on now, and like how do you stay grounded and just kind of sharing the things you want to share and still keep your life your life?
Yeah, well, for the most part, it's almost an open book. I mean, as you guys know, I've filmed stuff at my personal residence. That I try to keep to not showing exactly the location that I live, never saying where I live, but I'm pretty much comfortable with filming that. The farm's obviously always something that gets filmed. I never try to disclose any or tell anything about any of the land we rent or stuff like that. I mean, it's just another field as far as the internet needs to know.
Yeah.
And so that the reason I keep the acres quiet on the internet is, for one, it fluctuates from year to year, and number two, it's actually something that a lot of farmers never say what acres they farm. I don't want it to be a brag. Look at how many acres we farm or don't farm. A lot of the internet comments think we farm a ton more than we do. So we're in Minnesota. The guys down south, Iowa, stuff like that, if they had, the equipment that it takes to farm up here, because we have such a short window, they could farm 3 times as much ground because the weather's generally better and their window is way longer, or they can have a longer window where ideally we plant our crops in 2 to 3 weeks, and this year took us 2.5 months to do that just because of the short windows that we got. But when we get to the field, we could knock a lot of acres out quick, which is why a lot of the stuff is oversized. And it ain't just our farm in the area. There's tons of, smaller farms that have really big equipment just because the window is getting worse, actually. The window is getting much worse due to weather, to get the work done in good conditions.
What is it that kind of gets you up in the morning? Like, what gets you excited about doing what you do every day?
Well, it depends the time of the year. Obviously, everyone likes the busy season. That's just exciting. I love watching equipment roll and operating, and kind of just seeing the harvest in the plant is the best. Summertime can get to be a little drag, and you don't want to work in the heat. But I don't know. It's just always been all I know. Get up and work, and a lot of times we have a great crew that we work with here that we all get along really good, and it's a lot of times not like work.
Yeah. How important is that, having
It helps everyone's moods, and we all think alike for the most part.
Yeah. That brings up a good question. You said it's all you know. If you weren't farming, what do you think you'd be doing? Like, say you hadn't been raised on the farm, what do you think you'd be doing?
Probably a carpenter. As much as I dislike my own house projects, remodeling, and I fortunately am fairly good at carpentry. Now, a lot of those skills I learned on the farm, so I don't know. If I didn't grow up on the farm, I don't know. But probably something in mechanics or
You like working with your
operator.
hands,
Yes, yeah.
doing
I'm
something.
definitely not going to be the computer guy.
Yeah. Yep.
That's what Seth's here for, right?
Yep.
Editing videos.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's really interesting. What do you find? So you guys work like crazy schedules sometimes. You know, you end up with crazy hours. You know, back-to-back days for weeks or maybe even months on end at times. We're losing it. The whole set's falling apart. Yeah, we're still good. So with like some of those long hours you work, like what are some of the things you do to kind of like relax, to like take your mind off farming when you're not, when you're working some of those long crazy hours or something like that?
Well, when we're in the hours, you're just so tired that you get home and you just sleep and get up and keep going, and that there is no really decompressing. And actually, what we have found is taking a day off or a 2-day off, it actually unmotivates you. Like you fire on adrenaline the whole time, and that is something that we've talked about in our videos. Once that last acre gets planted, or even your a few hundred acres, the last 2 days are coming and good weather's in the forecast, everyone's just starting to lose their drive to want to work till 11 or midnight. And that is the adrenaline drop is definitely a true thing.
So
And we all experience it, and then you sleep a lot after that.
You just got to stay on and stay up. If you let yourself kind of decompress or come down, it's like hard to get going again.
Yes, for sure.
That's tough. So some of those things, like what are some of the things that, those long hours, the crazy days, some of the things you talk about on your channel as well. What are some of those things that people just wouldn't know about farming if they hadn't heard it from somebody or talked to a farmer or experienced a farm?
I think most people are very disconnected from farming in general and have no idea. They see a tractor, like the running joke of, well, we're done planting, see you at the lake. Like, that's not at all what it is. I mean, there's so much planning into the next season, like wintertime. It's all preparing for that next season, whether it's the guy in the office, fertilizer, setting up, like thinking about where the crop rotation is, all of that stuff, and then to the guys in the shop that are making sure that fixing everything that's wore out, preventive maintenance, just something that I think it's shown on our channel a lot. Of it is not jump in a tractor, go plant, and the seed's magically there, and everything's there. I mean, you get
we
to
even
see.
saw it today trying to work with one of the tractors for a shot. It's like
The batteries are shot in that.
dead, and jump in and got to fix something.
Yep, that will be added to the list.
But that's just to an extent that's just life, right? Is you just roll with. You get up in the morning and you go to do something. It's like, all right, well, now I got 3 other things I got to do to get to doing that thing.
Yep, and the more stuff you have, the more stuff just breaks doing nothing too. I mean, like the battery situation, they have a life expectancy and they're going to die at some point. Well, last week it worked just fine. Now this week they decided to be shot.
Yep. Yeah, and then your channel, you show quite a bit of like maintenance, and whether it's preventative or something happened, now we got to go fix it, and like I don't think people understand how much of that goes into operating a farm. Like,
yeah, and I would say we're maybe on the upper end of the extreme of. I think a lot of stuff, or a lot of farms don't probably maintain as well as we do, but we have the guys, we got to stay busy doing something, and the more you do, hopefully the less breaks when you need it the most.
Yeah.
So that's a large part of what keeping everything decent, safe, semis especially. Tire maintenance has been exceptional this year.
I think a lot of people wonder, where do you learn that stuff? Like you're going in and there's a combine right behind us, and you're doing some work on the head, and like where do you learn to do that stuff?
A lot of it is just watch either the person that's been on the farm the longest or knows the most about it. Mechanics are out here all the time, and I think every one of us are pretty glued to watching what they do, how they do it, because the more you learn from them that they know what they're doing, maybe they have the computer that tells you how to take stuff apart, or you can look up, how stuff is supposed to work and all that. So you just watch.
Yeah.
And soak it in and hope you don't have to do it someday. But when you do need to, it's nice to know. But yeah, a lot of my stuff was just working with Dad over the years on stuff, and he learned from 30 years of farming, watching mechanics. That's the hardest thing, like switching a brand.
Yeah.
I mean, for us to go to a different color combine than a green one would be like starting farming all over as far as combine. You don't know if something breaks. They all do the same thing, but their components are totally different from red to green to whatever color you want to talk
I think
about.
that's probably why Ryan doesn't want to switch to DaVinci Resolve.
Yeah, I hate that. It sucks.
It's like switching softwares. It's like, oh no,
Very
gotta click a new
controversial.
button on a keyboard.
Yeah, and that with the
Super
technology
Yeah.
too. I mean, that in itself is a major change, going from a different brand
Yeah.
from.
Well, I think to speak to that point of like just how you learn all these things, pick them up, and have to kind of reverse engineer things sometimes to solve problems. And like a big part of what we're doing with our new brand and with this podcast as well is like the name is Blue Collar Creative of our brand and of the podcast, and it's all about showing how that creativity plays into a lot of these what people would call blue collar jobs, and into things like agriculture, things like carpentry, or machining, or automotive, construction, all that stuff. And it's just like there's so much that goes into something that is that creativity, that problem solving, that reverse engineering something, or learning something just by watching it. That's like, wow, that's really impressive. That's it's so much more than just people working and like doing hard labor.
Yeah, and that's a lot of 30 years ago in this area, there was a lot of farm kids, and now there's not very many anymore, which in our farming career, me and Brody, Big Swede's farming career, we're going to find harder time finding skilled labor that can jump in equipment, not only understand how to run it, know how to fix it. And I think that's going to follow through all, blue collar jobs, or plumbers, electricians.
Yeah.
Growing up on the farm, there's always some wiring that needs to be done, whether it's right or wrong. Carpentry, fixing on your own buildings. Before you even say go to college, they already had the gist of how to put a screw in a board.
Yep.
Or a nail or whatever. Now I think, growing up in the city, they're going to college to actually learn how to do that.
Yeah.
As ridiculous as that sounds to me,
Yep.
I've actually seen it firsthand, and it's like, oh my goodness, I could do that when I was 4.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just about, you can't learn enough. You hire a plumber to come to your house, just watch them.
Yeah.
So the next time you know how to put a trap in your sink drain, and don't get charged $600 to come and fix your drain.
And I think to that point, I want to circle back and ask about like what do you think is causing less farm kids? But before that, like to that point, I think some of that aspect is like people think these things are so intimidating and so difficult, and it's like it's really, yes, there are people who are true like artists of the craft and who are incredible at like carpentry or plumbing, for example. But it's like some of these basic things, like you're talking like doing a trap or something like that. It's like it's not. It's just people are scared to try and figure it out. It's
Yep.
not as hard as it seems. It's just like you gotta
You
gotta
can
put in
you
that.
can always try it yourself, wreck it, redo it, and still be money ahead
Yep.
than hiring it
True,
done.
true.
But yeah, anyone if you can do the job, anyone can do it. It may be more difficult. Maybe you'll find it easier.
Yeah.
Once you get the skill down. I mean, anyone can do anything within most common
Yeah.
basic things.
Have you ever messed something up, Chet? Ever wrecked anything?
Who hasn't?
Which
any
week?
stories?
Which
Any
week would we
stories?
want to talk about?
Well,
Yeah, exactly.
what's a big one you can remember? Something where you were.
I was one that was early in the YouTube channel. We were working on, and this was two parties involved, but I had a mechanic here working on a combine, and we had the whole thing tore apart, and we were both working on it. And generally, when I put nuts on bolts, I tighten them up, and I didn't know he didn't. So when he said, "Yep, go put together the other side," I assumed everything was laying on the ground needed to be put on, not the stuff needed to be tightened. Well, I did not tighten them and made it half hour in the field, and all the shaker arms fell off of the combine and crushed the. There was mass deconstruction, and it's like, why would that happen? And I called the mechanic, and he's like, "Didn't you tighten those bolts?" And I'm like, "No." Well, that's why it happened. And that was just a case of two people working on the same job, but it was an accident that happened.
Yeah.
That was.
Doug will let you off pretty off the hook. All right, Doug.
It
Didn't
was.
give you such a hard time.
I fixed it myself by myself while everyone else was in the field, so I didn't go in too deep to explain what happened because
Okay,
it didn't.
We figured it out.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
solved it.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. Kind of jumping to, actually, I want to jump real quick back to, why do you think, you said there's like a lot less farm kids in the area, in this particular area. Why do you think that is? Like, what do you think's causing that?
I would say it probably stems from my dad's generation. In my opinion, I think a lot of farming was tough in the 80s, like really tough. A lot of people are going broke. There was no room for expansion. You couldn't afford to expand. You barely could afford to stay farming.
Yeah.
So there wasn't very much opportunity for the next generation. Plus, farming was very tough.
Yeah,
You know,
it's hard work too.
really tough back then. And I think the two, between them not maybe wanting to be on the farm and maybe just not being able to stay on the farm, I think that's a large part of it. The lifestyle, you either love it or you're going to really, really hate it. Dad says it all the time. You either love farming or it'd be the worst job you'd ever have in your life.
Yeah.
Because you have to be ready for a lot of bad days.
Yeah.
And there is never ever a guarantee. You may work a whole year and break even or lose money. So there's never a fixed income that you can feel comfortable with.
Yeah. I think that's another thing a lot of people don't understand from the outside looking in is like that there is so much volatility in pricing of things, in whether things could go
Yeah.
wrong for yield, and could you just kind of like explain that for somebody who,
For
The economics of a farm.
yeah, just how complicated, how many moving pieces there are to the economics of a farm.
So obviously you raise a crop to sell a crop. So most obviously companies or, they ain't going to sell for a loss. We don't get to set our price. So what the market is doing, you can forward sell, you can do a lot of stuff on that end. You can play paper. But for the most part is you don't know where the price is going to be, a year out. You also don't know what your input costs are going to be a year out, and that fluctuates. And it seems like the minute that the grain price does get good and farmers think, yeah, we're finally going to really make some money, then all the inputs follow its way up. Fertilizer starts going up, seed goes up, fuel goes up, and starts cutting the margin out that way. So that is basically the gist of selling the grain. Is not, you don't get to choose, and it can be a high risk. And then yield, I mean, it could be a low price, good yield, you still make as much. You could have a bad yield, bad price. That's when insurance at that point sets in. You buy insurance, and like we were talking earlier, you're not going to make money. You're not going to lose money, hopefully. I mean, that can all, vary too. Sometimes input costs are very high, and you cannot physically buy enough insurance to cover your input costs.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who's, in high school, something like that, middle school, and, kind of pursuing farming, not necessarily part of a family farm? Like, what would you say to somebody in that who's just looking towards that as a career path? And like, what would you want them to know?
That's a question that I get asked a lot. I never have a good answer for it. It is extremely hard to get into it. Now, is it possible? Yes. There's a lot of people that do it, but you're basically going to most likely have to find a farm that's willing to, you're going to work for them to learn, eventually, hopefully get into it. I mean, it's not like a store where you walk in and to buy ground is something you do after normally many years of farming, and it's still hard to do. To rent ground, it's normally very competitive, and so to find enough to make your farm not have to work in town, be your main income, it's going to take years to do that. So you kind of got to find maybe a retiring farmer, I would say, or the Big Swede. He's got a different story of how stuff came in, but I'm not going to speak for him. And that's just totally different. Every story is different. But as far as for someone trying to get into farming, I would say you're going to have to start with a farmer. I mean, you ain't going to start buying equipment, because the first thing you got to do is find land to farm and enough of it to justify owning equipment. Yep. It's hard. Yeah. And nothing is cheap anymore. And the inflation of all the equipment is, even used equipment makes it difficult for the people farming for generations.
Yeah. Should we get the Big Swede in here telling a story? Eric? Do you want to tell us your story?
It's a
give
question.
The people what they want.
It is a.
Do you want to tell us a story?
People what they want. Here, hop on in.
I don't have experience with it.
I'm going to do a little swap here, and we're going to hear from the Big Swede, because the audience is going to love it. So we've got to get him in there. I know he's sitting reclined. Everybody was like on their phones. I was like, I don't know. Ryan and I aren't being entertaining enough.
Yeah,
here, I don't think lame. So. We got to get the Big Swede in.
All right. So, Eric, Big Swede, introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Well, first off, I was very comfortable over there. I had Duggo's chair, and it was nice. But yes, I am Eric, known as the Big Swede. My story. How far back do we want to go?
Tell them about your college days. Not what you.
Not those parts?
No, not the parts they want to hear.
The parts they need to hear.
Yeah.
Well, when you're talking about the question that we get a lot of, how do I get into farming? I would say I'm on plan B of what I first saw myself doing in the farming industry. In terms of life, I don't know what letter I'm on, G or H. I mean, plans have changed, and I'm very happy with where I'm at. But I went to college. I got a mechanical engineering degree, and towards the end of my schooling, there was an opportunity to work with my mom's brother, my uncle, who was running the family farm, and his son was not too interested in farming, so there was no one to take after him. And so I finished school, and and started working with him, which he's in this area. This is where my mom grew up out here. So there ended up not being, we weren't able to transfer the farm or transition the farm for various reasons.
In the timeline, more or less, that both parties.
Yes,
Yeah.
timeline, financials, different opinions and goals, and it just didn't line up, which anyone that's trying to get into farming, and like you said, you go and work for a farmer, learn the ropes, see if there's even potential to take over. Plan on that potentially not happening, or
Yeah.
have a plan if that doesn't happen. And I didn't when I got into it. But while I was living and working out here, Chet and I met and became good friends. And when I saw that my future with, I'll say, my family farm wasn't going to turn into anything, we started talking about how can I kind of start over, be essentially a first generation farmer and still pursue what I really enjoy doing now. And when my uncle fully retired, the family land that he was renting, so from my grandparents, his parents, and then from my parents, his sister and brother-in-law, became available to rent. And so Chet and I and the Larsons had discussed all this, and I had been working with them for probably 2 years by the time my uncle retired, and then that land was available to me to rent, and we did the custom hire, custom work and stuff, and it's now been, this is my third growing season after taking on that land, and I went through a
He's
very
experienced.
interesting time in farming.
He's experienced many levels.
Yep.
Good prices, good yields. Now we've got bad prices, bad yields, yet to be determined, truthfully, but we're experiencing it all.
And
Yeah.
pretty much every season, Mother Nature had one hiccup she wanted to throw at us, whether it was a drought or a monsoon or windstorms and hail and everything. I feel like I've seen about everything she's got in 3 years, and I would assume there's still more to come.
I'd
so-
hate to see if she has more to unleash. I'll
Yeah,
just say
it's-
that.
But
So it's been a
yes,
tough 3 years.
No, not necessarily. It's been an interesting 3 years, because the first year, so I work with a grain marketer because I was new to all that, and I wanted to hire someone that could teach me the ropes in that aspect. And after my first year was kind of financially done, he said, "Don't ever expect to do that again." Because you had good yields, prices were up, we were able to make some good money, which was nice getting into farming because taking on a bit of debt the first year. And he said, don't plan on that in the future. We will try to mimic it, but it's two things that are completely out of our power, the markets and the weather. And you got to work with what they deliver to you.
Yeah.
And obviously he was working with us that I've been here my whole life, so I've seen a lot, and
Yeah.
Dad and Randy, and the first thing I said is, you made good money, keep it because you're going to lose it.
It's going to be gone.
Hide that money away somewhere for the rainy day.
Yep. But that's the sad truth. The so-called working capital, you better have some, because when times get tough, sometimes you may not be making money and you have to spend money to repair, a big repair, or maybe you need to add something to your operation, or something terribly needs to be replaced. That's when you're not making money. You're either getting loans or you're burning some working capital.
Yeah. So you better have some around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And to kind of touch back a little bit on my story too, when I was in college and then the opportunity to farm came up, I had worked with a farmer back in high school. I was mowing lawns before I could drive, before I had a license to drive. And when I got my license, Dad said, you have to turn in 3 job applications a week, otherwise you can't use the family car. And so I didn't want to go work at, a fast food joint or anything. Because then, I would just get fatter. So I had a friend whose uncle farmed and down by Buffalo where I grew up, and I went over there on a weekend and threw some hay bales for him, square bales up into the barn,
Yep.
and he had hogs and cattle, and so I ended up working with him for the rest of my high school career, and then went to college. And kind of what was the reason I brought that up, or what was in my mind, is some people might be listening to this and thinking, well, I'm 29. Chet's almost 29. I am 29.
Yep.
They might be thinking I'm 29 or I'm 30. I still don't know what I want to do, or I'm not where I want to be.
Yeah.
And when I was in engineering school, I thought, all right, sweet. I'm going to come out of this, have a job in 3-4 years, make 6 figures. Like, engineering's a good industry to get into. It's a tough schooling to go through, but I was always kind of okay at math, and that's a lot of what it is.
Yep.
But then that all switched, and then I got into plan A with farming, working with my uncle. That all, I'll say, fell through. And then I got into this, and now 3 growing seasons later, it took a while, but I'm very happy with where I am.
Yeah.
But it can take time,
Yeah.
and you never know which path exactly you'll go down.
Yeah. But it's all worth it when you get to where you end up, regardless if that's where you expected to be or not.
And the next 3 years or the next 5 years, who knows where they'll be.
Yeah.
No one knows.
You know,
True. So I wanted to pivot quickly to content creation, to the YouTube side of things, because you have a very successful YouTube channel. You know, like you said, you 410,000 subscribers or so. You're averaging 200,000 views a video or so, a little more than that. Doing a lot of videos every week, and it's really impressive numbers. And so the question there is like, what really got you into YouTube? Like what inspired you to start doing that, and then where'd you go from there?
I started with Instagram, was really where I got a following from, and then was encouraged by another farming YouTuber to start doing it on YouTube. There's obviously room for more growth there, more of an audience. It's a whole nother ballpark to get into. I mean, that ain't just pulling your phone out like Snapchat and
Yeah.
posting a video for 15 seconds. I mean, you got to know the editing, know how to do cameras. So that was a learning curve. We've come a long way, long way from where we started and the equipment that we use. We still film with the GoPros that you don't like, but as far as like editing, having you guys edit for us takes a ton of weight off of, we got to work. We film what we do, so we're working. We can't do everything ourselves. So that's kind of what how that happened and why I got into it. At that point, it was really cool. We're gaining a lot of subscribers, and that's just a fun experience in general. Like anyone that has any success with content creation, that first 100,000, that's just like, whoa,
What's
like
happening?
the conversations we had, so I had already had the YouTube channel going for a year or two before you came, for sure a year before.
2019
Yeah.
was the wet year that
Yeah.
I think you started filming.
And then you were here 2020.
Yep.
So it was already established, and it was kind of something we had talked about, like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing, so like, how's this gonna work? And I'll just say, when it was just me in the shop filming by myself, you feel pretty comfortable, Granted, we were great friends, but it was really hard to become comfortable, especially with each other, I would say, and getting him comfortable with the camera. And since then, we've obviously added a lot more hired guys also. But now I think it's just, you're coming to work at Larson Farms, you're either going to see people filming and what you may feel like is a waste of time. But it's a part of the operation now, to where we all yell, "Go get the camera! This is gonna be crazy!"
Yeah, because my intro video, you had walked into the shop, and I was supposed to come out of the the kitchen or out of the kind of the office and walk over to the camera and then start introducing myself. And I was standing in the kitchen there. I'm like, oh, I gotta walk out there, and this is happening right now.
Yep. But no, that we did. That was right. I would say that was right in the time where it was really gaining traction too. And so adding someone in, there's certain YouTubers that can do 'em, I mean, lots of them that can create content by themselves. But I feel like our channel is really does great when there's multiple characters. Makes it easier for me also when Dad or Brody or Eric grab a camera, because I can only do my job. I can't capture all these other steps that happen either before or after the job that I'm doing. So that's kind of cool to be able to tie multiple characters into it and multiple different steps of the process, because you don't just plant a field. There's many steps that happen before you go plant the field. There's many other breakdowns or stucks that happen. There's a lot of stuff that happens after that. So that is, but to get everyone comfortable was, for even myself. I mean, it's you feel weird with,
It is.
especially when you're not confident with it at first. Like, who's really confident talking to themselves in front of a camera?
Yeah.
I mean, I literally YouTubed how to do it, and
It works.
it worked. I don't know. I took a different method, but the more you work with different companies and strangers, the more comfortable you just, and you can encourage people that haven't been, like, film with somebody, a company, then they send out a rep that don't feel comfortable on camera. And I'm like, all right, we can edit this. This ain't live. So let's just have a conversation here.
Yeah. I think to that point, like, when was that point? Because the social proof really helps too. Like, when you see you're building an audience, people are responding well and enjoying the content that you're creating. Like, there's some social proof there that goes, oh, okay, like, this builds some confidence. What was that point where you're like, okay, this can work?
I would say right away. I mean, it started to encourage me. And I did a lot on Instagram before YouTube, so I already was comfortable doing it that way, like with my phone. But that was, like I said, short clips. Now you're walking around in front of people for minutes on end filming. That was a hard one for me to get over, especially going into environments that I'm not comfortable with, like different locations, different people, different companies, stuff like that, so, which is always why he would come with, just so that we could have a conversation. And it wasn't always like, I'm like, I need to have someone come with it, Dad or Eric. Like, we got to have more than just me coming up with ideas to talk about this product or this implement. And that is really fun. I really enjoy traveling around. We've had tons of experiences with going to different equipment or manufacturing plants, and that's always fun to see that.
Was there like a moment in growth of like a social platform or your YouTube channel, or a video that performed super well, or like an interaction with somebody who recognized you or something for the first time? Like, was there a moment like that where you're like, oh wow, this is becoming something bigger than I expected?
What year was that meet and greet with Umberfirth? Because that was like, holy cow. When
21?
Yeah, probably 21. When we got invited to go to the National Farm Machinery Show and do a meet and greet with Umberfirth. And oh man, when you walked out there and they're ushering you into the line, and the line was what? I don't know.
As far as we could see.
And they all are videotaping you, and it's like, oh, what have we created, or what? Like, you don't see it in our local area. Most people know us from just growing up here or being here, farming, neighbors, and all that. So then you get out of the area in a concentrated audience, and it gets to be sometimes out of control, actually, which is it's crazy. It's a blessing too. I mean, it's
What
it is.
what went through your guys' heads when you were in that? You walk out and see that line of all these people who are there to see you.
It's extremely nervous.
A little overwhelming,
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot
But
of pressure.
Right, we're at the farm show that has 300,000 people that come through it in what, 3 days,
Yep.
and so it's everyone in our industry all come into one city, and then we set up with Unverfirth, and they had us up on kind of a podium or a stand,
Yep.
which was a good idea because that helped with crowd control.
Yep.
But you walk up to that, and so we kind of have the bird's eye view looking around, and
But then you're also in the nest where everyone's looking at you.
yes. If you
And
lean
taking
over the
pictures
wall,
of
if
you.
you lean over the wall and look, everyone's looking up at you.
Yeah, it's a little awkward. But how'd that event go? Like, what'd you come away with from that? Was it exciting when you left? And
It was unbelievable seeing how the audience varied from little kids to 75-year-old men that maybe retired, or couples. We love watching your videos and telling their stories. And those meet and greets are hard to really connect with people because they get so out of control. Like, you kind of just shake hands, take a picture. You don't get to be too personal with them because, well, there's a lot of people that if you spend too much time with one guy, how do you not do it with everyone? And you'll be there for a year. So,
And then we're coming from a farm in Minnesota, and we show up there, and there's people that are nervous to talk to us, which we're farmers. They're potentially farmers or somehow related to the farm industry, and that was new and different because we feel like normal people. We are normal people. We just film what we do, but it's looked at differently.
I've questioned it a couple of times of, like, in those situations, this is how movie stars feel, only times maybe 1,000.
yeah,
Like, they're normal people that literally are just put on a pedestal because there's numbers on a screen or you did this or that. We're normal. It's fun to see how different people act about that. It's crazy.
that is it's interesting how there's something about celebrity. There's something about just like, oh, I know that person from something, and now I'm gonna act totally different.
Yeah.
It's strange.
And I was like that too, meeting some of the guys that were ahead of me in the farming YouTube industry, like the Welkers and Millennial Farmer. When I first met them, as I'm just trying to get going, and I just wanted to, like, how do you do this, man? And talk to him. I'd get nervous. I'd seen Millennial Farmer at a local farm show. He was doing a meet and greet, and I didn't even want to go up and talk to him because I was, like, nervous.
Yeah.
So I personally, yes,
Taking a nap.
he's currently
He's sleeping in my
sleeping
chair too.
in Duggo's chair,
Duggo's got-
wearing a Duggo
Duggo's got a good chair.
shirt.
So you were nervous, but you were already creating content at that point too,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
So you already kind of had started building something that was getting some traction. But it was like, whoa, this is
Yeah,
different.
it's totally different ball game, or it felt like it was. And like Nick Welker, when I told you about that, he walked up to me and is like, "I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. You're gonna kill it." And I was like, that was huge for me. And that was like when I had like 10 or 15,000 subscribers on YouTube, and it's like, well, at least you didn't say I suck. Like, it was huge. It was huge.
That's awesome. That's a really cool. It sounds like it's a really good community inside the farm tubing community, which is a word that most people don't know exists. Farm tubing.
Yep.
But it sounds like it's a really good community. Just speaking from both your perspectives as people who create content on a farm, who have kind of like this expectation of, oh, we got to put out X amount of videos, we got to keep things moving, because that's one of the things about content is you just got to stay consistent, or else it starts to taper off. what is the hardest part of doing that? What is the hardest part of having this YouTube channel and being on YouTube, but also having to farm?
I would say to pick a consistent date, whether that's once every other week or once a week or as many as you can think you can handle. But remember that in 3 years from now, you're either going to have to make the choice that we got to start cutting back, or you may run out, or you're going to have to start being more creative to keep it interesting. Because realistically, yes, every year is different, but you're doing the same jobs every year. So we do 3 a week. That's what we started out, and it was very easy to do. Now the longer we do it, it's like, this is getting hard. This is getting hard to come up with something new to explain that I haven't. And, I think there's new viewers out there where you can overlap on some stuff. But, pick something. I would suggest something like once a week. I mean, that's where I started out at. And then as editing, as I had my wife start editing, and I didn't have to do that. It was so easy to make content then. I'd film all day long. It's not my problem to deal with. Which she didn't enjoy that at all. But that's kind of where we got stuck at 3 a week.
Yeah, which seems like it's a good number. What's the most rewarding part of being on YouTube, kind of being in the public eye, and also the hardest?
Well, when you asked us about our opinion when we got to that farm show with Unverfirth, what I was thinking, and to kind of answer this question, when you have the little kids come up and they are just wide-eyed staring at you, it makes you feel really good, but in a way nervous, because you have maybe 10 seconds, because we're trying to keep the line moving, to hopefully leave that child with an impact, a good impact. And whether they're 3 years old and aren't going to remember a word, or they're 10 years old and it's going to sink in, who knows? But you try to be the leader that they're looking at you as, and that is a very rewarding part of it.
Yeah. What about you,
I remember that a lot of the little kids that look up either are scared and crying,
and they're the ones that are decked out in the most apparel too.
Yep.
Like, they're so excited. On the whole drive there, they were just couldn't wait to see us, and then they can't say a word.
Most rewarding is seeing that, and we try to keep it humor filled as much as we can, and clean for families. And I know that's a super rewarding thing to hear at like meet and greets, emails, actual mail. A lot of comments about, I just don't know how you guys keep it clean. And we really appreciate that, because I can put your channel on and my kids can watch it and feel great about it. Now, I'm not going to say that we're perfect all the time, but that can be cleaned up with editing. But that's something that we pride ourselves in, and it's rewarding when you hear the feedback of that.
Yeah, kind of being a example or some form of family-friendly content, and a model that kids can watch and not feel like parents don't feel like, we got to turn that off.
The internet, unfortunately, I think tends to sway towards maybe the more garbage talking. So that's something that we choose to keep it clean. It may not, if you slipped in some adult jokes every once in a while that may go over kids' heads, I think that would maybe get to be more entertaining for,
That's when you say, Seth, edit out what Eric said.
Cut that out, Seth. Yeah.
Well, what would you say is the hardest part of YouTube being in the public eye? The expectations.
Local hate.
Mm-hmm. Local hate, really?
Locally hated beyond belief.
Really? Why do you think that is?
Very true.
Jealousy. Farmers are extremely jealous, and I don't, not just saying towards us. I mean, in general. I mean, there'll be a neighbor that trades a tractor, and that next door neighbor, well, I got to trade a tractor. He traded tractors. I got to get something better than that, or there's jealousy, or someone rents ground away, or something happens, buys a piece of ground away from a neighbor. I mean, that's just everywhere.
Yeah.
To any farmer, there's always someone going to be jealous or upset about something. It's just really eyes on us for that. And locally, I mean, farmers out of the area can not be too worried about it, but locally, I know we've had trouble with people locally calling up sponsors and just letting them have it. And it's like, it's advertising. YouTube is a business. Social media in general is a business.
Yep.
So companies want to be on there. Well, then the neighbor sees that where you get to run a demo, and, well, how come I can't get a demo? Well, it's here in exchange for
Yep.
millions of views
Yeah.
per month, and that's what it is. We're no special farm. Like, they didn't just pick us and say, here, let's let them have it. I mean, it's obvious why it's here, and that creates the comments that you hear through your friends. This guy was talking this, and it's like, that one really, that puts a screwdriver in and twists it. So, and you've had comments too. We came back farming because of all the internet money.
Yeah.
It's like totally untrue.
Right.
Just told the story of
Yeah.
why he's here, how
Yeah,
he's here,
in it.
and that's just the stuff that goes around.
Yeah.
Very frustrating.
Yeah, really.
And that at the beginning, really, I had a hard time continuing because of either when you start, the hate's going to be the worst because they don't know you.
Yep.
Like the internet comments, they don't know you. You may not know what you're doing to fully know how to explain and create a story within one day is how we do it. I mean, all content creation is different. But for us, we have one day to talk about this, or, it might be one clip that you say something wrong in and you don't realize it. And then the comments blow up, call you all the names under the sun. And it's like, how do you turn that off? Like gets in your head. And then the next time you pick the camera up, it's like, here we go again. Are we going to get roasted? I don't think it really bothers you too bad, but
I was
it
just
sure
thinking
bothers
that.
me.
No, that maybe doesn't get to me the same, but the idea of the local hate is what makes me nervous, because that's our future, is the farm. The farm provides for this channel, and that's why we're here. And if there's enough local hate, it's going to potentially inhibit our ability to grow.
Or our
new
kids.
ground, the next generation. And that's, I would say, the worst part and my biggest fear with it.
Yeah.
And it definitely could be. I know it has benefited us too. We've picked up ground from a guy in Florida that his family ground was in our area. So it can work both ways.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's one of those things, to your point about the comments, especially early on. That's one of those things that goes along with, same as like that huge line of people. You walk out and it's like, oh, all these people are here for us. Why? I didn't expect that. The same goes the other way. Is people kind of treat content creators like they're not real people. It's like, oh, they're just like these people I watch on the internet, and so I can say whatever I want. And like they don't realize that stuff actually like that bothers people and that hurts, and that can make it challenging.
And then if you ever really want to go down the deep, dark hate hole, you get on the internet and just Google yourself, and then you find forums talking about stuff, and it's just like, where do these people dream up this stuff?
Yeah.
Totally false information, and it's just a whole form of just trash. And it's like, holy cow.
Oh, we watched speaking of that, we watched a Chet Larson exposed video on YouTube. Well, it was literally just, Chet farms acres in Minnesota. He's a fifth generation. It was basically your description, but somebody reading it. So you're not that exposed.
There's a lot of those, and they are so false. Like,
this one didn't have anything bad in it. So.
I watch them all, and they pull, there's a lot of Larson farms in the world. We're not the only one named that. And they pull information from their website and put it out about us, and it's like, it's not, no, we don't raise hogs or turkeys or yeah.
So I guess to wrap everything up, don't want to take any more of you guys' time. To wrap everything up, what would you say to somebody, both things to watch out for and some words of like advice or encouragement or whatever to somebody looking to get into content creation specifically? What would you say to someone?
I guess first thing, equipment selection that I thought of. Like just the other day, I was asking Chet if we had a head mount for a GoPro, because a lot of the times I get into a sticky situation and I need both hands to drive through, or just the equipment I'm running takes two hands, whether I'm in the mud or on dry ground. And so I was asking about that, just so I could try to capture. It wouldn't look the same, and it might not be the best route to film it because it's just on my head, but then they're at least seeing exactly what I'm going through, where up till now I kind of have to just set the camera down and get myself through it. And then the drone, drone adds a lot of neat video or neat clips to the video, and that's just having the right equipment for it.
Yeah.
Starting it, I would say mentally prepare for it, and it is not as easy as you think it will be. Like, it is not, if it becomes successful, I did not ever think it would. When I started posting videos on YouTube, I'm like, I never thought it would go to this. So I wasn't prepared to know how to just run the business side of what's going to happen. And it happens so quick. It's like, you get, don't just start working for free for, advertising, stuff like that. Because there is value there. The hate, you're going to have to learn how to turn that off, and so that you can continue to perform and do what you want. But the business side of it, that is something. It ain't just posting videos. You're going to have to be a businessman. When it takes a lot of my time now, just handling the internet side of my life, or all of our lives. It's talking to company sponsors, lining up this stuff. It don't happen. It don't just magically show up on the yard. It's months of emails and phone calls and planning and setting up stuff. It's just to wire up a tractor, to pull an implement is a day, depending what it is. I mean, there's a lot of back stuff behind the scenes that you're going to have to be prepared for.
Yeah.
And it's generally going to take more than one person.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think that's great advice, and I think this has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed, just hearing your guys' perspective on everything, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that too. Definitely do it. If you feel led to do it, do it. Yeah. It ain't gonna hurt you. People may talk. Who cares? Yeah. Who cares? If it's hooks and sticks, you'll be happy. You'll learn how to do it. I learned how to do it, just like we talked about earlier. You'll learn how to do it. Yeah. It's going to be a struggle and stressful sometimes, but do it. Don't hold back. Let her go.
Yep. Every fear you have, everyone else had that as they grew through their channel. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
I'm going to go back to my chair now.
Gonna go take a nap like Seth.